One of the DSM-9. My story is a little difficult to tell, so I'm probably going to end up reading a lot from my complaint, so bear with me. And the volume is hard to adjust on my computer, so forgive me if you have to turn it up a little bit. When I was about 12, my father announced to family and friends that he had been molesting me my entire life. He then tried to kill himself. In college, later, I was date raped. A lot of struggles, but in spite of them all, a counselor I saw through most of it said I was coping well, and after years of hard work, had only mild anxiety as an adult. I certainly never expected to be normal, so I continued my mental health care, always. Later, I married a man who seemed to be the man of my dreams and was so accepting of my turbulent past. I was completely open and honest with him. I didn't want to have any secrets. But shortly after we were married, he turned abusive. We did want to try and save our relationship, so we saw marriage counselors. But the counselors together decided pretty quickly that his violence and control problems were escalating, and the best thing for us to do was to separate until we could work them out. So together we developed a plan to do this. When I finally announced I was ready to leave, he lost it, threatened to kill himself and his daughter if I did. In the melee that followed, he lied and told police that I was suicidal and was lying about his threats. Of course, by the time they got there, I was a wreck, and he was totally normal. And because I had been so honest with my past, the police believed him. They arrested me and put me in a state mental facility for the indigent. There, in 2009, I was diagnosed with post-traumatic stress disorder and anxiety with a professional note to rule out borderline personality disorder. In other words, the possibility of diagnosing me with borderline personality disorder was to be further explored because I was having suicidal thoughts. Supposedly having suicidal thoughts. Although that diagnosis had not been confirmed, it's a common note on any file of anyone who's been suicidal as a precaution. However, the hospital quickly realized that I had been abused through their own experiences with my ex, and they only wanted to release me to a domestic violence shelter, as is shown on my discharge papers, and which is what I eventually did when a space opened up. During my time in the hospital, my husband emptied our bank accounts and began divorce proceedings. He then hired outside professionals to evaluate me for borderline personality disorder because my current doctors did not confirm this diagnosis. He wanted someone who would. I, of course, had my own personal therapist. Then I had, a doctor who prescribed me medications for anxiety. And then our marriage counselor. Those three that I had worked with for years on and off verified that I did not have borderline personality. All three of these people had seen me for a long time. In court, these two other doctors, evaluated me as well. I met with each of them for no more than 3 hours. Took a number of tests. My own psychologist did the same and similar tests. He's a court forensic psychologist in the same system and has the same or better credentials as well. And when he reviewed the tests done by these other psychologists, he reported them in documents to the court and in testimony how they had made severe misuses of the tests. If I could afford an attorney, this documentation could easily force the revocation of those professionals' licenses to practice, if in any other court than family court. In family court, doctors are immune from malpractice suits. But these kinds of disagreements among professionals reflect the way that in the absence of strong scientific basis for a diagnostic category that you find in the DSM, subjectivity and bias can easily come into play. Unfortunately, my ex had taken all of our resources, and there was no help coming for me. So as soon as the family court judge in the case heard these objective outside reports from these 2-3 hour evaluations by professionals my ex-husband had hired in the custody dispute, they completely overrode the many years of treatment and diagnosis by the doctors I had seen, who even testified and wrote letters on my behalf. The judge turned over full custody of our son, who was 15 months old at the time, and he'd been with me safely and happily 24/7 without any threat or concern. My ex even verified this in court and testified to it himself. I've never done anything to anyone. I've never harmed anyone. I've never. Still, I lost everything. I lost my home, my belongings, even the stuff I had before our marriage. Nothing. I have no money. I wasn't given a pillow, a blanket, a spoon, a fork, nothing. I was terrorized in my marriage, held captive as a prisoner, and in many ways I still am. I was so scared for my own safety, for my very life, that at times it became completely overwhelming. My ex-husband is incredibly wealthy, extremely powerful and controlling, and clearly a really good liar. Of our large estate, the judge let me use $10,000 over our several-year divorce, while my ex boasts to anyone who will listen that he spent well over 6 figures. I have to live every day knowing that my son is with a man who hurt the both of us and has threatened to kill his own child. My doctors have diagnosed me as traumatized, and yes, I am. My baby is with a violent man who threatened to kill his daughter, and I'm financially, emotionally, and physically devastated. I can't afford health insurance after paying court-ordered child support. Yes, I pay child support to a millionaire on a bookkeeper's salary now. I have severe migraines, which I have my whole life, and I have a football-sized mass in my abdomen, which I had a similar one in 2005 and had surgery to remove. It's probably the same thing. So I live day to day in severe chronic pain that could easily be treated. But because of all this, I can't get health insurance. Even if I could, I couldn't afford it. It's a really difficult cycle to get stuck in. So my friends, family, anyone who hears the story, by now they're saying, what? This doesn't make any sense. And it didn't make any sense to me. I was really frustrated for a long time. So I did a lot of research and reached out. And that's how I met some of these other people here. And what I found is that the borderline personality disorder is one of the worst labels you can give someone in a child custody dispute, probably in any kind of situation. The stigma is through the roof. Judges and doctors alike shun and discriminate because borderline patients are considered to be untreatable and or just plain unpleasant. In fact, there's a comorbidity rate. It's basically a death sentence, saying that your chances of dying are pretty high just because you have this label. My doctors actually testified that there's not even a slight chance that I have borderline personality disorder, if for no other reason that I am consistent and honest and committed to good health. But in a family court setting with third-party evaluations, the stigma is just so disproportionate that I never got a fair chance. Borderline personality disorder is judgmentally associated with false suicide attempts, which are made allegedly to get attention. It's a diagnosis often used improperly and accusatorily against women as lying to try and gain custody. It's also a little more accurately associated with cutting and self-harm, supposedly for equally manipulative reasons. All of these accusations are also easily tagged onto women who were abused as children. It's a severe personality disorder, whatever that means, that if used in court immediately activates biases that are clearly, incredibly, if not impossible to overcome. Regardless, I hope it goes without saying that even if I did have this disorder or someone else did, parental assistance, some kind of support would be more appropriate than being treated as a criminal or being denied rights to privacy, property, or help. Once my ex damaged my credibility in family court, accusations of borderline personality disorder, nothing I said was considered true, and anything I would say just would feed into their diagnosis. So he say anything he wants about me. If I denied it, I was delusional. If they liked what I said, for instance, being honest about my past, then that was taken as absolute truth. Because of this diagnosis, no one will even bother to find out if it's true or not. They just don't listen. My ex started all this saying, despite not being a doctor, that I did have borderline personality disorder. He misused the term rule out, lying over and over again in court that the rule out from the mental hospital meant I was diagnosed. He said that I'm lying, and the doctors he hired chose to believe him rather than do accurate evaluations or even read the reports. If someone looked at my case, they'd see the following. Anything I said about myself was classified as true and verified by my ex and accepted by the courts. Anything bad I said about my ex was described as delusional. I went so far to try and prove my honesty that I took a lie detector test, and I passed it after hours of questions and unsuccessful attempts to catch me lying. It's not a fun process. But my ex convinced the judge that I was so delusional that I was able to trick a lie detector test. The company actually came in, they sent somebody in who testified that if that were true, my results would not have shown normal truthfulness or untruthfulness, that instead they would have shown inconsistency or would have been hard to evaluate, impossible to evaluate. Believe it or not, I have proof my ex took a lie detector test too, but his results did show unreadable. So he and his attorney both lied and said they couldn't remember where they took the tests. However, I have emails that were shared on Skype that show the real information. But because he injected that borderline personality label, no matter how much actual documented, incontestable proof I had, he was consistently able to get the judge to not even look or hear my evidence, even though I had paper showing it. I know I struggle to avoid homelessness, and my son is without a mom, but I'm hanging in there. If post-traumatic stress disorder and borderline personality disorder were not so seriously lacking in solid scientific underpinnings, if there had been clear warning in the DSM about the importance of not assigning these labels, not even suggesting them, when there are obvious explanations for patients' behaviors or moods that might be among the criteria, I would not have been given these labels, and I would not have suffered the significant harm that has come as a result of being psychiatrically diagnosed. In fact, none of the things that have happened to me would have happened if post-traumatic stress disorder or bipolar disorder, any of these things had been scientifically grounded in any kind of serious mental illness. What exactly is the scientific definition of serious mental illness? Here are some of my losses. This is almost done. Thank goodness, because I don't think I can read much more. I've lost my home, my belongings, all my savings, my health insurance. I was, thank God, able to get a job, but I fear for losing it every single day. I've lost my child. I've lost my faith in reality after being a victim of violence and learning that my husband was not wonderful but dangerous. Instead of being told that I was understandably devastated, I was instead diagnosed with a mental illness. I've lost my privacy, my credibility, and my health.